And all my other smart friends ask me, what did you do wrong? I'm CFO, I'm chief sales, I'm chief production, and you are chief people? What exactly? What do you do there? So I told them, if they would have given me a board role overseeing the entrance gate, I would have accepted it. Could care less. Once I'm there, I'll find my way. If you really at some point think I want to get more responsibility, you sell part of your soul. You need to talk to your partner early on and say things can happen. And how do we play that? And again, you can step out. Or even when I was CEO of E.ON, when one of my children had a serious problem in school and needed some training, I sometimes corrected schoolwork in the board meeting. And they couldn't see what I do. So, and I didn't miss so many of the school presentations of my 4 children. Somehow I found the time, and yes, then I sacrificed, in other days I sacrificed a lot.
What do you look for in your successors? I mean, are there some key aspects, key elements you would say, those are key? If you don't have them, that will be quite difficult, and other things we can develop.
I think the one thing that you cannot develop that ought to be there is character. Integrity, loyalty, honesty. If I don't smell that, I don't touch a person. We should have shut out coal. If CO2 and the climate matters, we had to close the coal plants. We didn't. Can anybody explain to me why?
Dear students, welcome to the CEO Leadership Series. My name is Cheng Wang Li, and it is my utmost pleasure to present to you Dr. Johannes Teyssen, the chairman of Lufthansa, the former longtime CEO of E.ON, and without any doubt whatsoever, one of the most distinguished, well-known, and well-respected top managers and captains of industry of Germany and of all of Europe. Lufthansa is one of the 4 largest airlines in the world and the largest in Europe, with revenues of about 40 billion euros and more than 100,000 employees worldwide. And E.ON is one of the leading and largest energy firms in Europe, with almost 80,000 employees, revenues of about 80 billion euros, and earnings, that is EBITDA, of about 10 billion euros per year. Dr. Johannes Teyssen has been chairman of Lufthansa since Tuesday, May 12, 2026, and was CEO of E.ON for more than a decade, starting on Saturday, May 1st, 2010, and until Wednesday, March 31st, 2021. Mr. Teyssen initially studied law and economics at the University of Freiburg and the University of Göttingen. He completed his doctoral degree, or PhD, at the University of Göttingen in law, on the topic of the legislature and the judiciary in criminal proceedings, a comparative legal analysis of the relationship between the legislature and the judiciary in the USA and in the Federal Republic of Germany. Upon graduation, Dr. Teyssen joined PreussenElektra, a regional energy firm based in Hanover. He held different roles and, among others, was the head of the firm's legal department. He then became a member of the management board, or in German Vorstand, of Hastra, which is another regional energy firm. And upon the merger with 4 other entities and the creation of the newly found firm Avacon, Dr. Teyssen became CEO of that company. He then joined E.ON Energie AG, a subsidiary of the E.ON Group, as a member of the management board, again part of the Vorstand, was CFO of the company, and later became CEO of that firm. And during his tenure at E.ON Energie AG, he also became member of the management board, the Vorstand of the E.ON Group. After a while, he became COO, that is Chief Operating Officer, later Deputy CEO, and then in 2010, as I mentioned before, CEO of the entire E.ON Corporation. After leaving E.ON in 2021, Dr. Teyssen has held different roles and positions, and among others was senior advisor to KKR, one of the largest, if not the largest, private equity firm in the world. He's been a senior advisor to Viridor, and recycling and resource recovery firm based in the UK. He's been, next to being chairman of Lufthansa, also chairman of Alpic, which is an energy firm in Switzerland, and is a supervisory board member of BP, one of the largest oil and gas companies, and actually companies across all sectors in the world. Now, it is my utmost pleasure to present to you Dr. Johannes Teyssen, because I think we can greatly benefit from his knowledge, from his renown, and all learn a lot and pick his brain during his time here. I only wish we had 10 hours because I think we have a lot of topics that we could cover. In addition, since he has become chairman of Lufthansa and I've been rejected entry to one of the lounges after they restructured their Mild and More program, I hope that Dr. Teyssen, perhaps after this conversation, can put in a good word for me so that I can get entry again into their lounges. Irrespective of that, though, please help me and very warmly welcome Dr. Johannes Teyssen.
Guys, this is an academic institution. You should celebrate after delivery, not before delivery. And by the way, it's Johannes. We're here in English, and the doctor title I only use, admittedly, when I need a quick place in a restaurant or a good date at a hairdresser. Other than that, admittedly, if you're in business, the doctor title doesn't bring you very far.
All right. Well, Johannes, it's a great pleasure to have you here. Let's perhaps start with a conversation about you and yourself so that we get to know you. Can you perhaps tell us a little bit about yourself, starting with your childhood and school years?
Yeah, I'm from a family that had no connection whatsoever to business. I'm the first person in that family that went into business life. My father was a judge, my mother a teacher. And looking back over the history, also, I think it's only the second generation academic. So it is not one of these, let's say, Bush dynasties or whatever dynasties you have as in business life, where you inherit a job from someone. So I'm more from a middle class, German, nothing particular family in northern Germany. Roman Catholic. We were a minority in that region, and I don't know that much more. Deeply family-rooted, family mattered and at home. Other than that, nothing mind-boggling comes to my mind.
All right. And you decided to study law at some point. I mean, maybe before that, so law is can be quite an ambitious study program. I mean, were you a good student in high school, at gymnasium and so on already? Or did that pick up later? And why did you decide to study law and economics?
And economics, well, that was an easy one. No, but it's I said my father was a judge, so you could think, what should he do? My sister became a medical doctor, and my brother is a geologist. And that was great in my family because we could never compete and compare with one another. We had nothing in common. We loved that. That whatever career you had, when I came home, I was still the young kid on the block. And it's amazing. You come home and you behave like the youngest, not like the CEO. It's just change where you are and you behave differently, which is good. Studying in my times, I think now I read somewhere there are like 4,000 different studies. In my time, we had a book about that big, and there was one page for each study, so it didn't take too long to skip through. And I ripped every page out that didn't interest me or that I thought I couldn't master. And there was not that much left, admittedly. And just more accidentally by default, I ended up, I couldn't make up my mind between economics and law. And so I thought, well, let's try both and see how far it gets. And this is how I started. So I didn't have a career plan. I didn't even know where it would end. So I just started. And how do you know you become, for example, a good lawyer? I worked in law very shortly in my life, a few years. And after that, I left it again. At home, I would say my father taught us. My sister, as I said, a doctor, and my brother, geologist, were good lawyers. My father taught us how to argue, how to reason, how to give counter arguments, how to reach a synergy of arguments. So we learned at home the way of thinking, and that helped me tremendously. And I like this social structure. Law is just a very theoretical overlay of society. Administering that, understanding that, the intellectually things in it I found fascinating. If you go in law practice, most of these things never happen. Theory is interesting, practical life, maybe a bit less. So that's how I ended there.
Okay. And you said you didn't have a clear path for after your studies. You decided to obtain a doctoral degree, though. And then how come you ended up at PreussenElektra?
Again, predominantly accidentally. I didn't, my parents were okay, but not very rich. My father was the only earner, 3 children studying. So you get your money, but limited. And then I got an offer from a professor to work as a, how was it called, wissenschaftlicher Mitarbeiter or something, and to earn some money. And I thought, well, that sounds good. My father always said, what you earn extra is yours. We don't subtract. You will never get more. But what you add is yours. So I like that. And this is how then at some point also quit my economic studies, because it was a law professor that asked me. So I signed up, and then the guy changed from Freiburg to Göttingen. I went with him. And after that, I had now the study and the job. And so I stopped the economic side at some point as the main studies.
Okay, and how did that step toward the energy firm come about?
Just that another of the Oberassistenten, whatever that is, one of the lead
research
associates, or however you call those guys nowadays, he was from my professor. He went to that company and started first career steps. He had seen me before. He thought I'm not too stupid. So he gave me a call and said, do you know what you want to do? I said, I don't know. I studied law. I guess I have to become a lawyer. What else? He said, why don't you go in business? I said, I have no clue about business. He said, just come and we show you and it's interesting and blah, blah, blah. And I went there, and then they threw a total show at me. He brought the responsible Vorstand board member. And in my presence, they did a big chat about a problem in America. And then they had a whiskey. And I was, just a small student. I was totally impressed about the atmosphere, these people talking big world and big things. I had no clue what they were talking about. They were drinking whiskey and offering me a whiskey. I said, yeah, why not working here?
Right, all right.
I had no idea about energy. So just at the right time, the right call, that's it.
Oh, okay. What about the first steps in that company? I mean, do you remember what your first tasks were? I mean, what did you learn there?
Initially, just some extremely boring legal crap and corporate law. But then, sometimes, I told someone, you always need to sniff around what's going on in a company if you're interested. And it was 89 when I hired. Late in 89, as you know from history books, the Berlin Wall fell, and there was an opportunity. They wanted people to go there and conquer the East, but the senior guys felt it's so dirty and so difficult, and so they sent young guys. So they asked, who's volunteering to educate the Eastern Germans on business and energy. I was 6 months in the job. I had no clue about business still. I had still no clue about energy. But I was part of the team, and you learn with the students then. And that brought you some visibility, and the real breakthrough was, it was also the year when in the nuclear industry, reprocessing was stopped. And we needed to negotiate a contract with either the French or the British suppliers. And it was amazing in those years. In my whole company, the traditional German utilities in the whole company, there was hardly anybody in a decent English background. So, as you still may hear, my first wife was American, so I was decent in English. And that was a differentiator at that time. And that was a topic that was very important to the board, and suddenly I was part of the negotiation team. I was in East Germany important, I was in this, and then you suddenly get visibility. So I would always say, don't just do your job, look around where interesting things happening that catch attention, that are fun, that are new, and just offer your help. Maybe they take you, maybe they don't. So you just need to go somewhere else where you feel there's a little buzz going on, and that can help you to jumpstart some development.
Oh, okay, all right. And you seem to have done quite well in that role. Did you already have leadership responsibilities at that time,
No,
or did that come
no.
later?
And I had no idea where my career would bring me to. Not a clue and no plan.
Okay, so what happened afterwards then?
I think I did a reasonably good job, so they gave me the first, for a small group, junior management responsibility. I guess I did another reasonably good job. And again, then it sounds now difficult, but the legal counsel in the company that I reported to, I was a guy that brought me in, the former Oberassistent. He was 34. He got cancer. Dramatic development. He passed away within 2 years. And suddenly they needed someone to step in. And I still, up to today, if that guy would have survived, I'm not so certain if he wouldn't have made the career I made. He was a brilliant guy. Sometimes, I'm not saying try to kill someone, but sometimes it is, people saying they can plan careers, total bullshit. Yes, you need to be involved, you need to bring yourself in, you need to be ambitious, yes, but then it's also luck. Accidents, luck, things that happen, and being just at the centerpiece of something. And some people are by accident at some place that matters, and some people that are maybe brighter just happen not to be in focus. So don't give up if you're not in focus for some time. It's just an accident, and tomorrow it can change.
Okay. What was that leadership time or experience like for you? I mean, coming from the negotiation part and traveling around and being a translator of sorts as well, perhaps also cultural bridge sorts, and then all of a sudden having people responsibility.
Leading a small group of lawyers is not people responsibility. Lawyers are all eggheads and do their own stuff, and there is not so much to manage. I think the main thing is, another advice to you, I started to be really interested in what the company was doing. And I understood that I don't understand much. And then there is the official org chart. And then there is the unofficial org chart that you can figure out who's really doing the calls, who has really knowledge. And I was pretty curious to get to know the real people. And I just went to these people and said, I don't understand business much. Can you educate me? I'm just curious. Help me. And most people love to educate people. And I was sitting on Fridays like this, often in just offices, and asking smart, serious, more adult guys, just tell me, how's Energie functioning? What is it? What do I need to learn? How does it function? Or how do you, I was economics, not business administration, so help me to understand how to calculate ROACE. What the hell is that? Why does it matter? How do you calculate cash flows? What can you do to improve? So I just started to learn on the job, much broader general management stuff. Nobody taught it me. I think sometimes you just have to ask yourself. You have to find it out yourself. And you can learn it, I guess, in the classroom, but I think the best way of learning is go to practitioners that really apply it. Just be curious and just be nice to them and say, I'm an idiot, just, sorry, but I want to learn, just help me. I promise you, most people, when you're nice to them, they love to educate you. And then you steal with pride and learn with pride.
Well, that's very good advice. Johannes, when you look back now at the Johannes Teyssen, right after his doctoral, dissertation and defense within the first 2 years maybe of work, I mean, nowadays you're, very well established, well networked. I mean, I've had so many, top managers, CEOs, and politicians asking me to say hello to Johannes when they found out he's coming today. But looking back at a quote-unquote young Johannes Teyssen, first 2 years, let's say, what would be on his report card, if you were very honest? What were his strengths or your strengths back then, and maybe some weaknesses that you needed to build up, except for maybe the knowledge gap in business?
You oversold me anyhow, but I think I'm intellectually pretty apt. So I can learn quick, and I can digest information rather quickly. I can read patterns. So those were things that helped me. I don't think I came with very strong social attributes. I was definitely, also from home, yes, I was always somewhat trying to lead in the classroom and the university, but was I really a person that could lead groups that had a lot of empathy, social intelligence? I could lead by power, but with empathy, not so strong. So I'd quite deficiencies on, I would say, the social empathy side. And I remember I was brought, after first steps, top management did for junior managers an assessment meeting in a castle, blah, 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 whatever. And there were 20 observers, 15 junior managers to observe, and psychologists and every crap in the world. And again, I would say I was extremely well prepared. A lot of the colleagues came, like, we did our career, we just chat there, and I had asked all my senior managers that I always ask, help me. What is the latest buzz in the company? What numbers are in fashion right now? What do I need to understand? What is, latest discussion in the board on issues? So I came extremely, I would say, extremely well prepared. And I also had asked a trainer saying, how do you need to behave there? I said, don't dominate and be smart. A good role is offer to write something on the white wall or something, because you don't need to write what they say. You can write what you want, and you can dominate a little without to be too open. So I threw a great first day. And in the evening, one of the observers took me to the side, did a walk in the park with me, and said, you blew the group away. It was so impressive. You did such a great job. And the next day, I behaved like a total idiot, because I felt now I play them in the ground. And it must have been horrible. Just by behaviors. I was still intelligent and still well prepared, but I behaved so badly because I felt I had won the game. It's over. I killed them now for the rest. And that's exactly what you better shouldn't do in such an assessment situation. So at the end of the meeting, board gave me feedback and said, yeah, you're a very bright guy, but you lack any good education and any good behaviors. This way you cannot lead anything. The first thing you get now is a mentor and trainer. You need a coach. And in 2 years, we can meet again. So I got a warning, and I learned that it's not just about being the smartest guy on the block. It's also not winning the first half of a game. It is staying humble, understanding the needs of others, not overplaying your cards. You don't need to win 10-0. 3-2 is a just good outcome. Don't destroy your opponents or your competitors. It's just keep it cool. So sometimes you need to learn the hard way, and it helps.
That seemed to have been a sort of turning moment to some extent.
Yes.
And what about building that social skill, let's say? I mean, for you, was it a gradual process? Did you have those mentors to help?
Yeah.
Was it a bit of an intuition and natural process to you?
It was a learning process.
All right.
And I would say you can learn much more than you think. You will not change your character for good, but you can broaden your skills. My latest teacher is my daughter. She's a psychologist. And learn still a lot from her. She gives me credit for learning, even at my age. But she said it took her some years to educate me, still, in the last 5 years. But it is just be humble enough to accept that you are not brilliant in everything. So I took a trainer in communication, and also there, I didn't learn the theory. The theory doesn't matter. I went to a trainer where you repeat things in a group 10 times. 10 times. You get filmed every the time, and you make a critic every round. If you repeat a situation 10 times, you don't forget it. If you learn the theoretical art of management, I'm not so certain how far to bring it, but if you do some mistakes 10 times, or if you test something 10 times, you get pretty good.
All right.
And so it is applied learning, applied behavioral learning. And then you need people, you have to ask people, give me feedback. And I always, in important meetings, I targeted some people that I trust and said, observe me and give me open feedback. And sometimes it was positive, and sometimes it was, again, pretty lousy, saying, how in hell did you behave? How did you talk to that person? What do you think the group, that they trust you? If you talk to a friend, they know it's a friend, and you treated that person in that manner. You think anybody wants to work with you and trust you, that you stand, that loyalty is a two-way road? If you misbehave that way, then okay, sorry. First you go to that other person, apologize for your behaviors, and then you see how you can cure that misstep. So I would say, specifically make career, you have less and less people that give you open feedback. Identify people that are willing to take the risk to give you feedback, and continuously have learning cycles where you get feedback, critical feedback, and try to accept it. But it doesn't work every time, but it helps.
Okay, got it. Well, you've had a fascinating career with different steps and different organizations, and we probably cannot cover every single step in detail. Can you tell us a little bit about your time at PreussenElektra, the time afterwards, and also then your switch to Hastra and Avacon?
I think on a very high level, otherwise you get lost. Who can remember these company names? Most of these companies don't exist any longer. And it doesn't matter. I think the main thing is when I hired, energy or utility energy was still a state-regulated monopoly. We had protected regions where nobody else was allowed to compete. We had regulated prices, cost plus fee. We had 20-year contracts with our customers, since they didn't have so much choice. Was not so difficult. So it was a different world. Doesn't mean that there were not entrepreneurial decisions to be made, but it was only Germany, northern Germany, that is. And then over the years, this industry has so fundamentally changed. First, it got liberalized. So Europe came up with, deregulating the industry, allowing free price setting, free competition, forbidding all protective behaviors. Then came privatization, then came internationalization, then came new technologies. I was still there for the last round of nuclear. Or I had seen traditional oil and gas production, then came fracking. Something that we've never heard about. Shale oil and gas, never heard about. Changing the equation in markets I was in. We suddenly, I was part of the first international rounds, bringing the group to Scandinavia and then building a pan-European group. Then came renewables. So everything from asset, from technology, from market environment, from regulation, not a single stone is the same in that industry. And that is, maybe because I was cautious, maybe that's the reason there was always something new in that group. It was not the same. It was dramatically changing. So in the first year, it was just, starting to use your wings. First steps of deregulation, first steps of internationalization. That was the PreussenElektra time. And then when E.ON came about around 2000, they sent me, as a learning step, to these subsidiaries you talked about. And also remember, we're a number of pretty smart young managers. A lot of us got tested. One became a CFO in such a organization, another one chief sales officer in another, and blah, blah, blah. And I became HR officer in the organization. And all my other smart friends ask me, what did you do wrong? I'm CFO, I'm chief sales, I'm chief production, and you are chief people? What exactly? What do you do there? So I told them, if they would have given me a board role overseeing the entrance gate, I would have accepted it. I could care less. Once I'm there, I'll find my way. And what you described there, this merger of 5 independent companies, I orchestrated. Nobody wanted it in another company. I thought it's necessary. It was time of liberalization. The companies were too small, not integrated, just power, others just gas. I felt I need to bring those things together. And even against the opposition in home company, I orchestrated a merger. In the end, the group went along and said, my CEO told me, I don't think it's right. If you cannot make it happen, you can deliver. But we won't help you. I said, okay, as long as you don't hinder me, I'm fine. And I succeeded. And once I had, I think, 13 groups that could have blocked the thing with minority stakes or regulatory conditions. And I overcame all resistance. And once I had things together, then I said, okay, now you did it, now you're CEO. I said, okay, so no HR any longer? No, you're CEO. And by the way, CEO and CFO. I said, sounds good. So again, I would say, don't look what you're offered. Just take it. And I tried to be a good HR officer, by the way. I took it serious. I just did the other thing on the side. So whatever they give, treat as your last job. Do it the best you can. See if there are opportunities on the sideline, and then maneuver from there. Don't complain. If the group needs you somewhere, after I had that great role, suddenly my group CEO called me on a Friday and said, we have a problem now in Munich, CFO of the European headquarters. Johannes Teyssen, I need you there. I said, Mr. Hartmann, the big CEO. I said, I just became CEO of that company and there's so much to do. We have so many problems. I need to just consolidate, and can't we talk in 2 years again on that? He said, we can talk again on Monday. And by the way, there's only one answer, just so you're aware. But call me on Monday. Okay. So I knew that it's a waste of time to think. So I called on Monday and said, I'm so eager and I'm so happy. That's if you're in an organization, this is my culture, this organization has given, for me, opportunities of my lifetime. And early on, they offered me always new opportunities. Then you cannot optimize your life if they need you. It's an obligatory thing. It's a little bit like the army. If an officer is sent to a different part of the battlefield, he can't say, I love this part more. You are part of the equation. If the battle plan calls you elsewhere, you go there and you deliver. And by the way, you can leave. But I don't think you can stay and say, I optimize my life. If you want to make a career, if you're just sitting and doing, your legal papers, that's all fine, or your administrative papers in whatever department, then you're free. Then you can optimize your life. If you want to take a career, if you really at some point think, I want to get more responsibility, you sell part of your soul. You need to talk to your partner early on and say things can happen. And how do we play that? And again, you can step out. We're no slaves. But you cannot play against the general plan.
Well, that's very candid advice. Much appreciated. One more aspect you mentioned. I mean, you needed to overcome resistance with different stakeholder groups, and I think that's almost like an art form to convince people. I mean, especially with such a big transformation for their own organizations. Do you have any key piece of advice? How did you do it?
I guess it's a little bit like, and I can't play the game well, but it's like playing chess. You need to understand the next moves that could happen. What can this figure in the game do? What is in his authority or his ability? If it's a horse, you can just do a specific behavior, so you don't need to worry on some parts, and others you better protect. So analyze the game plan very well, and do a strategic plan. And don't just do the next step. Just try to think through what could be behavioral reactions 2 steps down, and understand what is the currency each of the other people is an important currency. It's not always money. Sometimes it's for one person it's important where the headquarter ends up, which I would care. What do I care? Where they put the house. So you read, if it's important, just retain that decision and know it's important for these 2 people. You can play it at some point. For another person, sitting in a supervisory board is an important currency. You have 10 of these roles to distribute, no problem. Make it difficult, make it sound difficult, but reserve a seat. And make sure that others will not just interfere. So read everything, don't play your cards too early, understand when people will probably trespass, know when it's really dangerous, but be also willing sometimes to step back, take a side road. My chief sales officer told me always, he's learning, he said, he said, you need to do the same. If you're a wine seller, you go to a restaurant and say, I have 6 bottles of brilliant Mosel. And the guy tells you, my cellar is full. Thank you very much, I don't need you more. Okay. But I have 12 bottles of brilliant white Chablis. I just told you. It's full. Get lost. And throws the guy out. And he comes to the back door and says, but 6 bottles of Bordeaux. So don't, if it's hard, come to the back door, find different venues. Just be insistent. Know where you need to be insistent and know where you can give levy. And play that carefully. It's a strategic game. And that is, in politics, in business, in family, it's not so different.
Okay, very interesting, very insightful. Let's get back to the chronology. So you were called up to return on Monday and take on a new role. What happened then?
I was CFO. I learned that it was a catastrophe. The year before, the E.ON Group had decided it was a huge conglomerate with 10 different divisions in 72 distinctively different markets. And in that year before, they had merged with another big company, FIAG, and they decided we will only do power and chemicals. And they sent me as CFO for the European power. But in the same year, there was the last step of full liberalization. And the whole industry was extremely stupid. Ruthless competition, underpricing each other in a totally stupid fashion. We offered, price rebates to customers that hadn't even asked for a rebate. We just distributed the money ludicrously. And I arrived then, and it was just, because again, the predecessor gave an interview that led to an ad hoc duty and was fired. So it was also, an emergency situation again. And I just arrived and thought, okay, it's now I'll just accumulate these numbers and blah, blah, and I see what's going on. And it was time for the first budget. The group had banked everything on the success. And the numbers came in from the operational companies, and a couple of billion were missing. It was, and I didn't know what in hell to do immediately. So the first thing I got was a Hörsturz. The only time I got sick on the job, because I was totally overwhelmed. So I had to throw all the plans away and said, we did first time now top-down planning. We need to see how we can cure that in a quick way. So it's impossible fully, so you need to go into reserves and do everything, and without breaching reporting rules. But you need to go in all venues. So it was a very, very tough start, And nobody prepared me for that. Nobody told me that it's a hopeless basket case, and nobody had told the mother company. The mother company was totally unaware that their bet was going sour, and that their golden subsidiary suddenly was not a golden duck any longer, but was a ugly duckling. And we succeeded turning it around sufficiently quick enough, and until that time we covered through some reserves and some creative ideas. But that was a tough start. But I don't know who knew it. I guess even in the headquarters in Munich, nobody was fully aware what's going on, because it was bad management, bad leadership, bad management. Everybody wanted to play competition without knowing how. Yeah. Tough start.
All right. Well, you managed to do that. What were some of the main levers you used to achieve that turnaround? And then you were also called to join the board of the E.ON Holding, the E.ON Group.
A few years later. Yeah. There was obviously you need to go all the way. You need to call all the CEOs, CFOs in and say, how did it come about that your numbers are suddenly so much different? So how much is bunkering? How much is just conservative planning that you have here? What went different from last year to this year? What can be cured? What can be corrected? What do we need to do? So it took a total reset of the operational model of the group then in a few months, plus some creative ideas that I don't remember. It is, if crisis hits, you go to the basics, full focus, forget everything else, decide what is now the main thing, and then you concentrate all your management ambitions just on that. I had the same when I hired a few years back as chair and president of this Swiss company. It was in the midst of the energy crisis 21-22, before Ukraine. And the first paper I received after signing up was the duties of the president in a case of insolvency. I said, what in hell? Didn't I do my homework? What do you mean by insolvency? And they just had margin calls. Prices had exploded, which is usually good for a producer if prices are up. But all your old market-based contracts, you need to balance with a margin, because you could fall out and you need to give coverage to your counterparties. And that company never had paid more than 50 million as margin calls. And that exploded in a couple of weeks to 2 billion. And then you learn revenue is a nice thing, profit is a nice thing, but it all doesn't matter. Cash is like oxygen. You die very quickly. You don't die so quickly because you don't have profits. You don't die at all without revenues, as long as you have cash. If you don't have cash, you're dead. So I knew from that day on, it's only cash management. Sacrifice your profits, sacrifice your revenues, doesn't matter. It's cash. And understand what cash drives, and that's the same on the other situation that I described. There was profit, it was not cash, cash was surplus. So it was how do you orchestrate profits? You can sacrifice some cash, no problem. So you always need to understand what's your situation. How do you now focus to bring the target about that is important? And that willingness to radically sacrifice all other equations. I think that makes a difference between a good manager and a better manager that is able to sacrifice things, to give up things, to also part from legacy, from tradition, from something. Understanding situation has changed, situation is dramatic, it's about survival, it's about a strategic survival. Analyze the situation, take a bet, because whatever you do is a bet. But choose a bet. Don't try middle of the road. It's always that. And so many cars coming from all directions, never good in the middle of the road. So decide which side of the road you take and then put it all in. Okay, some, if possible, retain some cover for disastrous error, but everything else sacrifice, and then go.
Okay.
And that was Munich when I joined Munich. And the same thing happened again later when I was CEO, and suddenly Mrs. Merkel decided to sacrifice the nuclear overnight with all the consequences. Again, it was then about survival again. I broke the group apart because I couldn't feed the whole group. It was no survival where we stood any longer. So I decided, what is the business with the best future that we now focus on, and everything else ought to go. Although it has a 100-year legacy in the group, it ought to go now. And you can be wrong. But if you don't take a decision, you're definitely wrong. Just being afraid to take a decision is usually recipe for disaster. Being exposed to a radical thing is also not nice. If you can avoid it, avoid it. But if you're in the situation, then analyze, listen to people, take your decision, go for it, and don't try to balance it with all counterbets.
All right. You mentioned, very fascinating. You mentioned, there are a lot of changes in the energy sector. Probably still are some changes today, and there were also some changes and movements in your career, so to speak. Can you tell us a little bit about, what happened in terms of joining the E.ON board and then being called to become CEO of E.ON, and perhaps also your inner workings? I mean, was it very much expected? Were you very happy? Did you think, oh, wow, now it's even more responsibility and so on? What happened then?
Well, the first transition came, I joined the board in the top board in E.ON in Düsseldorf then in 2004. In 2003 was a generational change between the legacy CEO and the next generation. Some people approached me in that time and said, should you throw your head in the ring and try it? I was just, 43 or something. I felt totally unprepared and overwhelmed. So I said, no way, I cannot do it. I'm not the right person, definitely not in this part of my life. 4 small children, and this was voluntary. I didn't have to opt, so I said, no, it's not my time. So I stayed back. I was then asked still to join the board, but probably was the right decision. If you feel you're not prepared, you don't have it yet, then don't go for it, because then you probably don't have the resilience to stand the fight. And then life went about, and at some point it was clear towards 2010 that at some point there would be the next succession, and the chairman then at some point choose me, I would say, as the internal candidate, and first made me COO and then elevated to deputy CEO. So it was clear after that this, yes, if I totally misbehave, steal the silver, give stupid interviews, misbehave, then it can still go wrong, but otherwise it will materialize. So I was at some point, I knew it goes that way. It's just a question of timing. What I obviously, again, was not prepared as COO. I knew all the operations in the group at that time. But the CEO role is, again, very different. It is not the better COO, it's a very different role. Much more exposure to the public, to the capital markets, to the media. All problems go home with you, personally. Everything will be tagged to you. All easy decisions are taken elsewhere suddenly, and you get only. So everything that you could also do well, other people have already done, and everything that other people try to avoid to decide go to you. So it is. I still would say it's a dream managerial position of my life, but is it all fun? No, not really, because it comes with a lot of authority and the ability to do big strategic calls. But it's also, I would say, you don't have too many good sleeps. Because if there's some problem somewhere, it just haunts you in your nights. Some people may be better with that, but I know that I had my sufficient numbers of bad night sleeps, and also media labeling me as a whatever, and not always fun. Sitting in TV studios, being asked, how can you, after Fukushima, how can you talk for nuclear? Don't you love your children? And all crap in the world. But so it is. It came. I learned in it. Tough decisions sometimes. Again, also a lot of fun. The nicest part is, you talked on a few people that sent greetings to me. For me, almost the nicest part was you get to know so many people, so many very interesting people from academia, from the arts, from business, from politics. I had every second month I had a dinner in a small group with the various chancellors. Which, is interesting to listen how these people just feel, what, observing them if they really mean what they say, if they sweat or not. So it is this exposure to extremely interesting other people from a variety of things. That for me was the biggest thing, and also the hardest thing to let go. The power, I had 11 years, 44 quarters in Wall Street in London. Give me a break. I didn't need so many more. The money. It was, this, you're suddenly, you'd learn again that you haven't not been in all these nice, interesting rounds because you're the smartest guy on the block and because your name is Johannes Teyssen. You were only there because you're CEO of E.ON. And once you're not CEO of E.ON, you're not there any longer. And that's quite okay at some point, but it's all these transition steps, in and out of a job, redefine a little bit how you live, priorities is healthy.
Okay. Well, thank you for your openness. It's very, very open. What about the day-to-day life at that point in time? And when you became CEO, you said you brought home a lot of, challenges in the firm. I assume you didn't really have an off day or a long vacation where you said, all right, no one's going to call me or write me. When did your day start? How long did it last, your work day, and so on?
I know some CEOs, do this competition on high numbers. I work 80 hours a week, just deduct the time to take a shower and to eat, and when precisely do they breathe? So I think it's a lot oversold. It points a little bit in this, also to this question of work-life balance. I could never make sense of the term. Admittedly, I just don't understand it. I think I learned throughout my life that everything is a continuous balance. Even before I was in business, I needed to balance time with my partner, with my children, with other things. Yeah, what is new? When your partner is sick, has a disease, you need to have a different way. You don't go to sports. Yeah, do you need a sports partner, healthy partner balance? It's all bullshit. You take responsibility as a person, as a private person, for something, for your family, for your children, for whatever, and it comes with obligations that you need somehow to square in. And then you take a job, and it comes with obligations that you need to square in. And there were times when there was no crisis in my company, in my various roles. When I was a junior manager, there were sometimes times in summer when there was hardly work. I went to the pool. Should I sit there and wait for work to arrive? It's bullshit. So I always, looked around, and I went with my children to the pool. Or even when I was CEO of E.ON, when one of my children had a serious problem in school and needed some training, I sometimes corrected schoolwork in the board meeting, and they couldn't see what I do. So, and I didn't miss so many of the school presentations of my 4 children. somehow I found the time, and yes, then I sacrificed, in other days I sacrificed a lot, and I couldn't do everything. My children, by the way, still talk to me, and I think they still like me. And yes, they tell me sometimes, you have not been as present as other fathers. But the good part, they say, you have been present when we needed you. And it's okay. You had your priorities. We understand that, and we respect that. And so I think if there's a crisis in a company, and like in this other company where insolvency was imminent, as a board president, usually you spend 1.5 days a week. I spent every minute in that year in that company, every bloody minute. It's on survival of that company. There are several thousand jobs. It's the survival of a company. I cannot now suddenly say, guys, I just retired from E.ON. I just wanted to take a first board role and learn how that is. And I had not meant to have a full-time job. No, I didn't mean that, but it just came about. And then you do it because it's your dumb duty. You cannot tell the company, oh, by the way, you can die now because I don't have time for that. I need to balance, my sports. So it just happens, and then you do it. And then came also later a year with no crisis in any of my companies. I learned golf. Trying. So you take this balanced decision all the time. But for me, this specific term work-life balance just pretends that there is an opposition of the two. Look back in the history of our forefathers on farmlands. I think they had a work-life balance debate at home, or that they all sacrificed their families. If it's harvest time, everybody works. Period. And if it's winter and there's nothing growing, yes, then you can go in the local bar and talk about how brilliant you are. Just don't allow yourself to put things in opposition to each other. You need to learn to build resilience, to have conflicting challenges, and to balance those. And you cannot give theoretical priority of one or the other. If one gives you headroom, use it. One needs you, give it. And otherwise, don't go in the kitchen. If you're not willing to take hard decisions in balancing various duties, don't accept them. It's your liberty. Nobody forces you. But you can't have both. The Swiss say you can't have the Fünfer and the Hörnchen. So you need to take your decisions. And then you need to live with it. And don't just challenge yourself all the time and complain about it. Just has happened to your forefathers, will happen to your children. Balance your duties.
All right, understood. Let me switch gears a little bit and talk about people relationship and management, so to speak. I mean, as you climb, especially in those positions, but even long before, I mean, there are two types of people that people may encounter, business leaders encounter. One are the yes men or women, people that perhaps because they respect your track record, they always say yes because they think you know what's right, even though they might have a different opinion. And the second one are envious people, NIDA, jealous people who are looking at you and feel, which is a totally normal human emotion, right? Mm-hmm. But have you experienced that and seen others experience it? And how do you deal with that? Do you have any advice?
The main advice for me was I had to learn to talk late, not early. Because if you're a CEO and voice your opinion first to something, you will silence a lot of people that feel uneasy to challenge the boss. So if you're really interested in other people's opinion, and if you're not interested, you shouldn't go for a meeting because it's a waste of time. If you don't want to listen anyhow, you can send your decision in writing. You don't need to waste your day in a meeting. But if you understand that it's smart to first listen to people, talk late. Best last. Let other people first express them. Don't immediately jump on them, even if it's not so smart. Let it stand. And then see that they debate with each other. And then also these different attributes happen. The people that are silent, the people that are pushy, the people that are arrogant. they usually balance each other a little bit off, specifically in the presence of a CEO. All of them have a tendency of not want to falling out. So set an atmosphere where even extreme characters will not totally derail, and where you have an atmosphere of a creative debate. That is, I think, the main thing. And understand all the time that the most important decision, if you have a leadership role, the most important, prepare your succession. You may fall out tomorrow because you're not the right person any longer. And the company is more important than the hired CEO. Because you're sick, because whatever. So succession and developing talents is the most important duty that you have in leadership. Everything else can be replaced. Smarter people, you should always have smarter people around you than you are yourself. You don't need to be the smarter CFO, the smarter CEO, the smarter salesperson, the smarter AI person. If you're a good person, if you're a good leader, you have people around you that are capable to run their jobs, and let them set them the targets and let them deliver by themselves. Let them make the errors. It doesn't matter. But create an atmosphere where you have followership and where succession is always high on the agenda. That is, I think, the main thing. And for example, in not business now, before we always asked about all my mistakes, that was for me the biggest mistake, for example, of our former Chancellor, Mrs. Merkel. She just dropped out at some point, and the party had no well preparation. Europe was not prepared. Nobody was prepared. She was just, she just decided, I walk home now. Nothing was said. There was not a convincing succession. She didn't care. And that is a catastrophe. It was a catastrophe for her party. It was a catastrophe for the country. It was loss of opportunity. And I don't want to judge what she did right. She did a lot of smart things, and she did her fair share of mistakes, as we all do. But for me, that was the thing that I have the hardest time to excuse. And it's also in other companies. Before I signed in or handed in my resignation at E.ON, because I felt it's now time, I had private chats with my chairman. Obviously, I could not say I consider stepping down, because then the company would have to go ad hoc immediately that evening. So you need also to understand all these responsibilities of ad hoc in a listed company. So at some point I went to my chairman and said, theoretically, if I were ever to consider to resign and to hand on the baton, what would you think a good timing could be, and what would your way of thinking to handling the situation? And he looked at me and said, theoretically, you think such a situation could be far out or closer? I said, I assume not too far out. I said, okay. I said, give me a few months' time, because then I sort out succession. I tell you when I theoretically would be ready. At some point, he approached me and said, I have a theoretical good outcome. I said, that's good. By the way, I just made up my mind. I'll tell you next week. And then I officially handed in my resignation. And then the official process was kicked off, and the outcome happened as prepared. And the company was well set to have a succession. And my successor is smarter than I believe. He's doing a brilliant job. And I don't have any involvement with the company, because I think once you let the company, you should leave it for good. I'm the biggest fan, but I don't want any role in that company. I had my time. I'm their fan, but no involvement. And so that is extremely important. Whatever role you have, if you want to make a career, I would first ask you, sir, you want to move to the next job? So what's your succession? Oh, you have not prepared anything. I don't have time for you. Maybe you first take care of your duties. And once you have two choices, then maybe we talk again. Before that, I'm not so interested in your career.
Talking about succession and perhaps being a mentor and developing talent, what do you look for in your successors? I mean, are there some key aspects, key elements you would say those are key? If you don't have them, that'll be quite difficult, and other things we can develop.
I'm, by the way, also with all my roles, I have too many. I'm also working in a mentors organization, CMI, Chair Mentors International. We are a bunch of about 50, 60 former CEOs, chairs from across Europe and America. And we teach upcoming or incoming CEOs and help them, mentoring them for a year or two. I'm working presently with 3 mentees. 2 are in a succession, and the question is, will they make it? Should they make it? And 1 is in the job and wants to get help landing the job well. I think the one thing that you cannot develop that ought to be there is character, integrity, loyalty, honesty. If I don't smell that, I don't touch a person. And that cannot be learned. That you bring home probably from your parent house. So that is nothing to be learned. Communication you can learn, all content you can learn. Character you have or don't. The second is for a CEO is resilience. Can a person take pressure and pain without defaulting, falling apart? That you may have observed partially in other jobs, but you should very carefully see, because that's, people start to show their real face in a crisis. If they fall apart, if they can keep their cool, and the CEO needs to stay reasonably cool, even if he doesn't sleep well at home, he can't show that too bad. He cannot sleep well, that's not a problem, but he cannot show that. Because, if the captain on the bridge panics, the people on the under of the boat, they all jump the boat. They need to look at the captain and have the feeling, the lady there, or top lady or whatever that is, she's standing her ground there. She still stands on the wheel, and she holds her in the storm. As long as they see that person shows resilience, they think it's not yet done. It's worth fighting. So this resilience, you need to try to touch and see if it's there in a person, and not everybody has that. And then I would say what you teach here is, do people have the ability to think strategically? Strategically means to elevate to a specific level of thought and keep that level, and don't just continuously go from the bushes to the 10-mile height. Do they know when to go deep and when to stay high? Can they develop scenarios? Can they think, broader and longer? I think this is things very difficult. You can teach elements, but you have it well or not so well, and I don't know how you get it, but I think it needs to be there at least. Maybe it can be learned a lot, but if you choose a CEO, that needs to be there. I think most other things, and also for CHRO, most other things is arbitrary. For example, I join now the Lufthansa Group. I hardly can distinguish an airplane from a car. And that is not so important. That is not so important. It's all learnable. The question is also, how much also does a chair need to understand about a specific technology? Does he need to be able to distinguish precisely the engine class between a Rolls-Royce and I don't know what? No, he doesn't. So he needs to be a good learner, needs to be curious, really willing to continuously learn and curious. I think these are the attributes I would look for a good CEO, a good leader. All content questions, experience in the industry, depends on the environment. If you have a good COO, your CEO can come from wherever. If nobody in the group understands anything of the business, could be a little risky.
Okay, well, excellent. When you were CEO, jumping back and, again, for the sake of time, maybe we pick out a few highlights. When you were CEO for more than a decade at E.ON, you did many, larger transformational things. What do you want to talk about? I mean, there are two aspects that may be quite interesting. One is the spin-off, arguably the largest in Germany's history, frankly, was Uniper, spinning off Uniper into newer energy companies and conventional energy, so to speak. And then the second one was a rather complicated transfer into kind of getting Innogy, right, from RWE or RWE. Do you want to say how those came about? What did you do? What did you think of those?
I think about the spin-off situation that after the nuclear phase-out, our balance sheet was overdrawn. At the same time, we were still in the aftermath of the Lehman crisis with low wholesale prices. It was just clear we don't have the balance sheet to continuously house all the things and also the embedded risk in the various businesses. And also, after a deeper analysis, we understood we are still a conglomerate, an energy conglomerate, but a conglomerate. The capital costs of some businesses, regulated infrastructure versus outright generation, extremely different. Technology cycles, extremely different. Innovation cycles and innovation pathways, extremely different. And the average cost of capital between a regulated business and emergent risk, they don't matter to general investors. They are too wide apart. So I decided, my balance sheet is in the way. I cannot continuously house and feed businesses that are so different. I need to take the jigsaw and take it apart. The problem was when we decided that it was still looking reasonable, supportive, and then things became tough. Then the German parliament interfered and said, you're not allowed to sell your nuclear. And forced me to retain nuclear that didn't fit to anything. And I had to decide, do I give up my idea or do I find a solution with an interference? And also it was clearer and clearer that the balance sheet, allowing for such a spin-off of that magnitude was too thin. And I went to my chairman and my board and said, guys, this is heart surgery now. It is getting tough. I still think it's right. I think we need to swallow the nuclear pill for now. We need to sort that out later. We need to live with the balance sheet. Are you willing? They need all to sign the spin-off paper. At the day of the spin-off, we had negative equity capital. Still employing at that time 50,000 people, negative equity is not so funny. We did. We then, together with Leo, Leo was definitely my right-wing man. We successfully sorted out the nuclear equation, won legal battles against the German state, and made a couple of billion out of it instead of swallowing pills any longer. And then I still found, yes, now we are a little more focused, but full growth still difficult to see. And RWE had gone the same way. They just did the same the same spin, but they called the different part mother company than we. I retained my future business in the mother company, and they put the future business in the subsidiary. And so we just a reversal by regulatory reasons and balance sheet reasons. And I felt like, if we now would do a swap with one another, both have just, obviously started to focus. If we do one more step, then it's, pretty focused. Balance sheet should be stronger, growth should be better, equity story, the market should be stronger. And what I then did is, admittedly, I thought with my team. And then I gave my colleague a call and said, shall we have a cup of coffee? I come to Mönchengladbach and do you have time for a coffee? we see everybody knows if such a call comes, it's can be tea or coffee, doesn't matter, but you do your wargaming at home and say, sure, best thing in the world, come for coffee. And then we chatted and we played the idea of that fundamental swap that has never happened, also the biggest asset swap that has happened. And then we negotiated it in a few nights and days, and again surprised the markets with that announcement and a lot of legal battles against it. We survived them all. The last one was, I think, recently decided by the European Court of Justice from some unis against the reorganization, also in favor. So now finally it's all, has been under water on the bridge, but now it's also legally totally sealed. So again, both very radical structural reorganizations, sometimes driven by a strategic analysis from cost of capital, technologies, customers, balance sheet. But then the bravery to go for it. Looking back, again, it could have gone wrong. I think for both sides. Both sides, RWE and E.ON stood in newspapers time and time again, the dying dinosaurs. And a lot of junior people from the renewables, from modern energy, when they saw me, they looked at me, patted me on the back, said, yeah, you're phasing away. And I said, yeah, we are phasing away. And I think today both groups are extremely strong. Both have shown very strong growth. Both have a different profile today. Both are successful. I think that played out well. And the colleague with whom I had my tea and coffee, we are friends again and good friends, and we sometimes have coffee together. But it is difficult to organize, and it takes good analysis, good team, and then some dedication and lots of luck.
All right. Well, I'm glad it worked out and it's been finalized. How many, out of curiosity, would you guesstimate how many of those bigger transformational ideas do you have that you perhaps also just brush away at some point because you felt, it's not feasible, it's the wrong timing, or there was not such a right partner? Would you say it's 1 out of 10 that then come to fruition, 1 out of 100, or was that one or those two?
Probably 1 of 10, because you don't even risk so many things mentally on that size. Okay. But again, I would say, by the way, not all of these steps I cooked up. CEOs always have a tendency owning all the problems and all the successes. In reality, sometimes a good person in your company approaches you and says, I have a rough idea, not thought to the end, but what do you think if you would consider this or that? It's fine. Then you listen to that person and then you start to work with that person and maybe you finalize the idea. Maybe it's predominantly from the other person. It's absolutely fine. You don't, CEOs that think they're the most brilliant person and all the successes they made up, usually are bunkers. CEOs are orchestrators of things. They are not Nobel Prize winners for creativity usually.
Okay. All right. Another question on the energy sector in general. What do you think about the energy transition of Germany, of Europe, of the world, and the nuclear phase out? Do you want to give us your take on
the nuclear phase out? Will not happen. It's a total mistake. And in Germany, it will not be reserved. Nobody can be as stupid to test it in Germany. Germany is a romantic nation that dreams of forests and no risks and total security and harmony, and so I wouldn't put a dime, but for a lot of risk industries, I wouldn't put a dime into Germany. I would always do it elsewhere. But if you look, I think the right combination of the future is baseload needs to come from renewables. Renewables are the cheapest source for electrons. And you should harvest that wherever you can, where it's economically achievable. There's a limit in most systems. After that, the electron costs remain cheap. The system costs explode. Because if you have too much renewables, you need to build extensive grids, backup supports, battery storage. and the battery, the system costs eat you. It doesn't help you that someone tells you the solar power at midday is free. It's not even free. It's negative. It's negative value. Period. That's not the question. The question is system costs. In the end, someone needs to pay the system costs. But still, harvest as much as you can economically from renewables, and then you need a second backup. If you're blessed like Switzerland and you have huge lakes in the mountains, you don't need so much nuclear, you take hydro. Same in Norway. Same in some parts of Asia. If you have the right geography, do big hydro. If you don't have that, you need CO2 free. There's not so much CO2 free. Hydrogen is no source of energy. It's a source of storage. It's an energy consumer and not an energy source. So what precisely do we have then? It's nuclear. Nuclear is extremely dense form of energy. I am optimistic that the next generation of reactors will be inherently safer, small modulars. Let's wait and see. So I think a good balance of backbone nuclear and lots of renewables and some storage capacity is for energy probably. So Germany went, as Germany is, reasonably stupid. What did we do? We shut out CO2-free energy, nuclear, and replace it by another CO2-free source, renewables. And coal, we retain coal. Yeah, great idea. We should have shut out coal. If CO2 and the climate matters, we had to close the coal plants. We didn't. Can anybody explain to me why? It's utter stupidity. And we today still struggle to close them down. And now we plan to build, 12 or 24 gigawatts of gas-fired power plants. Because we don't have any dispatchable source. Is that the solution, that we build now a fleet of gas plants instead of retaining the nuclear plants that we had, that were CO2 free? Germany has done a couple of brilliant steps for the world. That we subsidize the solar wave was the biggest economic help that Germany ever did for the world. The Chinese later took it over. We didn't retain much, but we helped that it got developed in the world, and that was good. Most that we develop offshore and onshore wind is okay, but the overall equation, in my eyes, don't add up yet, and are too costly. Our system is too costly. Our country, and decarbonizing our economy by killing energy-intensive industries, for me, not a tangible solution, because then it will be run in other countries with a less decarbonized environment, and that will not save the world's climate. So I think fundamentally going for decarbonization is absolutely right. Climate change is there. We have an obligation. We need to solve it. Is a solution a risk-free one? There is no risk-free solution for big issues, not existing. Nuclear has some retained risk, absolutely. I think it's a controllable risk. That we in Germany try to just pay the most expensive system of the world and avoiding all the risks, it doesn't work out. So a lot of right things, some wrong things, but if you ask in the energy community, you don't see many travel groups from China, from other Asian countries, from American countries coming to Germany, study our brilliant energy transformation, saying, how can we learn from that? These travel groups just don't exist. Most of the other countries think Germany either has a secret that they don't tell us and that they will unfold at some point and then they kill us, or they are not the smartest. I'm afraid we don't know a trick. So we go a very expensive way that is difficult. But again, that's, for example, for a business person, if it comes hard, politics decides. Irrespective, it's a democracy, authoritarian. In the end, politics decides. You need to live with it. don't cry so long. It's environment. It's like, you can't change it.
Okay, all right. Let's go back to kind of your own track record.
But we need to give room to the others. At some point.
Exactly. So I was gonna just maybe cover, you know, your time after E.ON. So you decided to leave E.ON after more than a decade, after you know, having transformed the company, and you decided to took on various, you know, different roles: senior advisor to private equity firms, being a board member, and so on. Why did you take on those roles? Why did you take on Lufthansa as a chairman?
Lufthansa is the latest kid on the block. Early on, for me, it was clear I want to be out of Germany. And I wanted to be out from my immediate industry, because I never wanted to compete with E.ON. I said I wanted to leave the company. I wanted to leave it, and I'm totally apart from it. I love the company. It gave me all my life opportunities. I will never compete with the company. I will never say a bad word about the company. It's a great company. I love it. But I wanted to give my successor, and you met him, the levy he needs. He doesn't need a Muppet show where I sit on the veranda and render comments, or where journalists observe me. What do I say? So I said the best place to work now is far away in other industries and in other countries. And I wanted to learn something new. Oil major, one of the most international companies, BP. I have never been in West Papua before. I tell you, different world. I've not been in many parts of the world that I saw with BP, and I have not seen many of these technologies. I've not seen some boardroom things that I have observed there that were not observable elsewhere. I learned UK governance. I learned different technologies. I learned the boardroom was a variation of, with a majority, by the way, of females. But they were brilliant people from a variety of industries and backgrounds, from India, from I don't know where. Brilliant group of people, a lot of learning. I think I have added something, I hope, at least they tell me. So I loved it. Switzerland, the Swiss governance system is also superior to the German system. They lack co-determination. But by the way, it's not a social disaster area. If you ever go to Switzerland, it's well-paid jobs and quite harmony system. But for that, they don't need to overcrowd boardrooms. They found different ways of balancing social equations. And they offered me a job as president there, chair of the Verwaltungsrat, where you're responsible for the strategy. And I like that, that I'm not just like in a German supervisory board, just flying over things, but I could, you know, help develop the company and learn Swiss governance. So I took that. KKR was something I never understood private equity. I sold to private equity, but I never fully decrypted how they make their living. I just knew all the typical blah blahs, you know, disaster at the entry door and whatever. So I wanted to learn. Some of the funds approached me and I interviewed, and then they hired me, and it was a tough learning for me, extremely, but it was good because as CEO of E.ON, when a new question came to me, which I didn't understand, I just looked around, there were 70,000 people, a lot of them bright. And then I called some young people like you in and said, you know, I have this very interesting new question. I have no clue. Can you work it up for me? And then I received a 3-pager or whatever pager, and someone pre-cooked it for me, and I just had to digest it. Now, as a retired CEO, when I looked around, the only person I could see is my wife. We share a double office since then, and there's nobody else in the room. So whatever came, questions to a variety of industries. They didn't come with energy initially. They come with everything, you know, shipping and fiber and whatever investment. I needed to learn that all. I needed to do the real work. Yes, they gave me papers I could digest. I have my network of people sometimes that I can call from all time, say, tell me your industry. I have no clue how it works. Can you just tell me how this thing works and what's important and what are the value drivers and what are the risks? So it was real learning, but I enjoyed it. And I worked with it. They are often young people, smart people. Not arrogant, actually, but smart. And so I loved that. And then I said I have this environment of governance, international governance, oversight, investment. Then I joined the Fritz Thyssen Stiftung. It's a trust that finances liberal arts with limited funds. So I'm sitting on the curatorium there. I'm sponsoring some museums, and I'm working for a social company in my home city in Düsseldorf that runs help shops for drug addicts, runs kitas. They just desperately needed help. They were extremely good people, but had a problem adding and subtracting numbers. And they identified me and said, "Can't you just help us?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And my wife and I just, did a basic balance sheet with them and taught them a little bit about planning. And it's fine now. They're surviving with almost 1,000 employees, and they're doing a very good job for society. So I built up a portfolio of things that attract me mentally. For me, the currency today in this phase of my life, by the way, is not money. Sounds stupid, but I have enough for the remainder of my life. So yes, they still pay me well, but it's not the currency that matters. It is also not this power, authority. It is being appreciated. Bringing value to a creation of a business or a social enterprise or an art enterprise. Working hard, bringing value to it, see that you're appreciated and that people thank you that you still do that. And then it's fun. It's just fun to work. What in hell? I'm 66. I can't go to the golf course every day. It's boring. Yeah, I want to learn it. I would love to play it a little better, a little more stable, but just golf. I have 3 grandchildren. I taught my American grandson lately driving bicycles because the American father struggles to teach bike riding. So I taught the little 6-year-old bike riding. I can do it for a week or 2, but after that, I would not be the grandfather overseeing every other day, not my life. So it is fun. I just like this challenge, this intellectual challenge in variety of industries, environment of governance system, different environments in the arts and the liberal arts. So just, stay young, stay involved, work, have fun with work. I think work is fun. Just sitting at home and staring at the TV set or continuously see stories on soccer or playing golf. It's not my life. I do all of that, but not just. So that's why I do it. And Lufthansa, admittedly, is for me. I believe we Central Europeans, not all of you obviously are Central Europeans, but I take now the home crowd. Lufthansa is the only surviving airline for passenger, for traffic and cargo between Rome and Brussels. All others have gone bust. So there's no Swiss airline, no Austrian airline, no Italian airline, no Belgian airline, no German airline left, but Lufthansa. Lufthansa owns all these Swiss, Austrian, or whatever they're called. Can we survive? Isn't that infrastructure a necessary part of strategic autonomy for our nations in this time of dinosaurs? The Chinese, the Americans, tramping on us, setting us conditions in a variety of environments. I think some things, energy, basic logistics, chemical, pharmaceutical, we need some core infrastructures to remain resilient and independent and autonomous. I believe that's part of it. I believe Lufthansa is not a finished story. It's not everything is, I stop there. Don't ask me further questions. I'm in for a week. It looks from the outside, it's not a finished story. And when they approached me, they said, we tested now, we have done now, we just at 100 years, by the way, it's a little myth story. It's not truly 100 years, but who cares? Long enough. So they said for the first time, we always tested the insiders. We have the feeling we should go to someone that is not from the industry, but that understands capital-intensive industry, that has restructuring experience, that has strategic thinking ability, and who comes also with a level of ruthlessness. And we identified you as a potential source. It would be good for our nations. I debated with my chief advisor, which is my wife. And by whatever reason, we came to the decision that I give my best. So let's wait and see. The jury is out. After a week, let's talk about Lufthansa in a few years.
Okay. All right. Well, we wish you the best for it, for sure. And
thank you very much, by the way.
You're coming at
You
the
should
right
all
time.
support us and fly lots of Lufthansa, by the way.
All right.
For very expensive tickets, please.
All right. Let's go over some quickfire questions very quickly. So, Johannes, what type of food do you like to eat?
Italian.
What type of music do you like to listen to?
Opera.
Okay. What about favorite vacation spot?
Vancouver.
And if you do have some free time, what hobbies do you pursue?
I love to read history. I'm a deep fan of Bayern Munich. And lots of family.
Okay. If you were to be stranded on a lonely island and you could only bring one thing, not a person, but one thing, what would it be?
Water. No, I have no clue. Let's assume water. Probably a book. You die if you don't mentally stress yourself. If you don't move your brain, you face away. So something that, or a game or something that continuously would, maybe a game that continuously changes where I need to, we know the Schachnovelle from Zweig. So you need something where you stress your brain, otherwise you will die.
All right. Now you have a lot of skills, acquired a lot of skills in your career. If you had the choice of one of those, those supernatural powers to be able to fly or to become invisible or read minds, what would it be? We can skip it as well.
To retain, it's not an ability, but to retain the support and love of my partner and my children.
Oh, that's
and my grandchildren, so that I'm welcome at home and that I'm part of a family of people that love me. That is probably the one thing. If I can create that with a mythical pill, I would take the pill.
Oh, that's very sweet and kind superpower. So maybe last quick fire question, since you mentioned books. What books do you like to read? What books do you currently read? And or do you have a book recommendation for us?
Some, but I sent you rather somewhere else. You're close enough. You belong to the TUM, a lot of you. Use the opportunity this season or next season to see Oedipus in the theater, in the Residenztheater in Munich. That will blow you away. I just flew into Munich just for the evening one night because I'd read about it. I've read a lot of Welbeck. The Travel of the Endurance, The Journey of the Endurance from Shackleton is something that I would always tell people it's worth a read. If you don't know it, read it, The Endurance. This failed adventure going to the South Pole, where the ship is being caught in ice, and Shackleton had to restructure the whole group that was set out to conquer the South Pole, and they now was just on survival. It's one of the best management books you can read. How you learn to reset your target, reconfigure relations, win a group. All of them survived. Everyone survived. Sitting on Elephant Island for a year, so that's a good book. But Oedipus is one thing I would say. And be involved in culture, and expose yourself to funny things. I always in my career accepted invitations to also funny things. I went to a course on the story of St. Paul. I couldn't remember. I think my mentor sent me there, and I sat there and I said, "What in hell did I do? 4 days on St. Paul." And I thought it's a waste of my life. And at some point, mentally, my brain started to work, and I started to build analoguses between something I heard about the life of Paul was one. Paul is probably the founder of the church. It wasn't Peter, it was Paul. That brought it away from the Hebrew world and made a world church out of that. And that person, it's mind-boggling what he built and how he did it. And I didn't know that much, but I learned it there, and suddenly I got ideas for business problems I had. Not because, they were somewhere in the Bible, but and it was not precisely what Paul did, but some of his way of thinking. I suddenly thought, couldn't I apply it to a very different problem? And I found at that seminar at least one good answer to a problem that had hunted me. And if I go sometimes to art exhibition, a lot of them, I think, you can also throw most things away. If I go to the Biennale in Venice, I went there twice. I think, my goodness, is it art or can it be thrown off? But I go sometimes because you expose yourself, provokes you. Everything that provokes you mentally will cause something in your brain, and something will happen in your brain, and then analoguses happen, and you find solutions to business problems or your family problems. So don't be these idiot experts that are the best experts in strategic management. Be good, but after that get very broad and expose yourself to funny things. It will be much more helpful for you than reading another book on strategic management. Will be go to an opera, go to a concert, a rock concert, go into a funny art exhibition, go to Oedipus. Something will happen with you that is much more material than another business problem.
Please allow me one last question, Johannes. If you were to look back in a few decades at all that you've done, what type of achievement, what type of legacy do you want to leave behind?
I think I'm not a classic entrepreneur. I'm a hired gun. I'm a hired manager. I was always in my life an employed CEO and employed chairman in private and public companies. I never owned a company. It's different. Mr. Schwarz here is a different animal, a different breed. I'm not saying he's superior, he's different. So in the world I lived in, I only held the baton for a time. I knew this company is bigger than I. It's not mine. Not mine. It's given into my guardianship for a time. And maybe that came also from my father already. I always felt the desire at some point to hand it over to someone in a hopefully a little bit or better state than the ones I received, or at least in the best state I could deliver. I would have been a disaster if any of my companies would have failed under my oversight, and it could have happened. It might have mentally destroyed me. So but that also pushed me to the edge always, that I felt the obligation to give in all these jobs my very best, which is limited. What I have, to preserve it, to develop it, and to hand it to someone as good as possible at the right time, and also smell when it's time to go. As it says in the Bible, there's a time for everything. It's a time to come and a time to part, and a time to lead and a time to save or to serve. And the smart people smell when it's time to move, and they fight the right time for an exit. As Mr. Hoeneß, he doesn't know when to part, but he theoretically knows, but he practically doesn't. But he once told me, Mr. Teyssen is saying, I want to one day leave through the big entry gate of the stadium, being celebrated by all the people instead of being let out by the security on the side door. And yes, that would always be also my ambition. Doesn't need to be highly celebrated, but in peace and still, some people say, oh, he's leaving, it's sad, instead of some people saying, is he still around? So finding the right time to do the right things and handing things over in a decent state, that would be my dream.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the very open and candid conversation. Thank you.
And now the tough questions, the honest, the tough ones, the ugly ones. Don't be kind, just shoot.
Ja, hallo, mein Name ist Teyssen. Ich studiert Business Management in TUM. And now I want to ask a question. I know I also enjoy to be water, just like Bruce Lee has already said, be water, my friend. But be water is not impossible to lead a team. So I'd like to ask as a question. How do you deal with labor strikes and what factors will you take into consideration? Is that a problem or not?
In Lufthansa now, the strikes, you mean?
Yeah, right.
Again, I will not talk on Lufthansa. It would be extremely stupid if I, after 1 week, even in such an audience, would voice an opinion. And precisely, it's one of the most toxic things is a strike situation. If I position myself in public on that thing, I'm dead. After that, how can I orchestrate? I would give up my whole room for maneuvering if I answer your question. So I would only say, also yesterday I flew from London, not to Bonn, sadly, just to Frankfurt, and after that 4 hours train. The pilot approached me and said, Mr. Teyssen, you need to bring peace to the company. And the only thing I said, it will take a lot of people to help. As a chairman, you need to keep some distance. You can't position yourself publicly. So believe me, I look at the situation, I form opinions, but I will definitely not position myself publicly. So I cannot comment.
To be fair, you asked for tough questions, so you.
Yeah, it's okay.
All right.
But I said initially when you were still outside that I might not answer all because I need to protect my companies.
Great. I was making sure it's me. So hi, I'm Morin Schroeder. I also study at TUM. I study information engineering. Thank you for the speech, of course. And I also want to say I'm a big fan of Lufthansa. I fly it all the time when I go back home. You give also these little chocolates. That's very nice, I must say. That tastes pretty good.
I eat them too.
I wanted to ask, of course, you're a seasoned CEO. You've had experiences with a decent number of companies. You've held the position for quite some time. You've gone through some major restructurings and so on. But I wanted to ask about, I'm sure there are, but would you name 1 or 2 maybe decisions that sort of haunt, may be a bad word, but sort of stay with you more emotional than rather they're hard in the sense that you need to crunch a lot of numbers, you have to strategize all, but somewhere you've had to maybe lay off some people and it personally stayed with you because you spoke with sleepless nights. And I suppose they don't come only when things are hard, but sometimes also when things are moral or emotional. So that will be my insight. Okay. I'd like to know.
Again, after the nuclear phase out and the Lehman crisis, we were deep underwater, and it was clear we also needed to do radically and immediately work on the cost side. Without the cost approach, I didn't see a road to healing. So I asked some managers to lead a project group to identify, and we then laid off 12,000 jobs. And you know some of these people. And you also know 12,000 people mean, with a partner, each one a child, means roughly 40,000 people are exposed to a very difficult life situation. Relationships might fall apart, children will lose trust in their mother or father, so extremely difficult. So, but you cannot not do it. If it's necessary, you need to do it, because if you don't do it, all the jobs will go. Just avoiding the cuts will mean that every job is on risk. But having that responsibility of real layoffs is still not easy. And CEOs are great in delegating these decisions and let junior managers pass the news, but you should understand that's you. When I got my first job in this Hastra company, a small company in Lower Saxony, I was interviewed also by the owners, the co-owners, and by the Betriebsräte. And I never forget, there was a very smart Betriebsrat from one of the offices. And he came to me and said, I observed you did your candidacy in the last weeks. You gave lots of speeches to our employees. He said, you're a good speaker. I think sounds good. He said, by the way, first and foremost, this company employs 2,500 people. At that time, they calculated always with 4. He said, it's 10,000 people that are now in your responsibility. Don't forget a single day. 10,000 individual faces that you from today on or from next week when we elect you will be responsible for. And by the way, when you give your smart speeches, most of our employees don't understand what you say. And they don't care. They just do one thing. They look in your eyes. They observe if your face, your body language, your eyes speaks the same thing that your voice says. They can see it, they can read that. And the only thing they want to see is, are you a person that they can trust and give their life to almost, because they could be unemployed. So that's, people will not listen to your smart arguments. They just look in your eyes and they follow you and trust you. Or they don't trust you. So never miss your responsibility for individuals. And always understand, not the argument, it's the conviction that you create and the followership you create or not create. And I took a learning from that, and I think the person was right. It goes up to boardrooms. Also in boardrooms, it's not full of the most intellectual people. It is conviction that you need to create. And if you don't believe what you say, good people sense it. So be certain what you say and that you mean it, and that you deliver on that, and that you don't change your mind tomorrow morning just because someone blows at you.
Hello, my name is Gloria. I'm a master student at TUM, and my question for you is, you have admitted that empathy and communication didn't come easy to you. So my question is, which would be your advice maybe to a student who is starting his career right now and is not naturally charismatic? Thank you.
Empathy is not identical with charisma. Charisma is dangerous. Sometimes people say, I carried some charisma. I'm not even certain that it's so healthy. We are not the religious leaders. Religious leaders, charisma is helpful. With business leaders, I'm not so certain, because sometimes these charismatic, good speakers, sometimes get carried away by their own blah blah and by their own emotional oversell. Stay humble. Create followership, convince people that they can trust you, that they can support you. And that takes more. You need to be identical to yourself. They see if there's a fraction between your voice and your body, and whether you just tell them a story that you don't believe. So make sure that you never, if you can avoid, don't sacrifice your credibility. As long as people say, I don't like what he says, but I believe that he believes it and believes it's necessary. As long as that stands, that works. And the empathy side is more for, don't get lost in your own stories and that you know everything. Listen to others, understand what their needs are, and allow them to first express themselves. You can, anyhow, a CEO, you can decide in the end of the day. Don't worry. Whatever anybody says, if the CEO in the end says, everybody agrees we go left, by the way, we go right, then everybody goes right. That's the power, the good thing is business is no democracy. In the end, there's a decision period. But first, give yourself the freedom to listen and understand if people are stressed. We even late in my life, we started to change things in the board meetings. Sometimes my colleagues told me, we can feel your mood when you come in the morning to board meetings. And sometimes you come and we can feel, it will be a terrible day. Johannes is, in a bad mood, he is stressed, and they gave up the day. And I was not even aware. And then we said, every board meeting we started, everybody expresses themselves, how do you feel? It's not as good, blah, blah, nobody feels good. Give a serious answer. Why do you feel good? Why do you feel stressed? Do you have a personal problem? Do you struggle with a business situation? Just express yourself. And then when everybody says, that they come with mental baggage, then you can talk with another, and that's acceptable. The other person is under stress. I don't know, the partner is sick or something. Other things are on his or her mind. It's not a problem. You know that. And if that person is sometimes jumping short, you understand. It's unavoidable at this point. And they understand also about you, that you're presently contained in a situation, mentally restricted. And then they help you a little bit. And sometimes someone just cracks a joke and says, Johannes, wake up. We know you are not in good mood, but we don't have time for this now. Let's take a break. Let's have a coffee, and then we come back, and maybe you start behaving again. Okay, let's have a coffee. So create atmospheres, rule games, where also the top guys get reminded that they're human. The Caesars always had a slave walking behind them, holding the Lorbeerkranz and saying all the time, Caesar, also you are mortal. You are mortal. So don't forget that.
Hello, thank you very much for your time and this fructiferous talk. And my question will be the following. How do you manage in such a competitive industry to take the risk management and also this driving situation that influences the world, like the Strait of Hormuz and artificial intelligence, these different factors that affect your industry? How do you manage them?
I don't know. I don't have a simple answer to that. Obviously, world as you describe is getting more complex. It's not the lack of information, it's the overwhelm of information that's today's problem. You get so much information on risks, on things that you could get lost in continuously analyzing and trying to mitigate. Again, strategic thinking. Just early on decide which risks you decide to neglect, because they are not a black swan risk. Even if they materialize, they will not kill it. You need to reduce complexity. Humans, we are not machines. We don't have endless mental calculation capacity. And that means we need to reduce complexity. And it's also the art of things. Decide where you reduce complexity, what you neglect, where you put focus, what the main outcome ought to be. And then look what risk matters to that outcome objective. The others, let them materialize if they happen, and hopefully not. Tell someone to have an open eye on one or two others, but neglect, reduce. Otherwise, you block yourself.
Hi, I'm Parth. I'm also a student at TUM. I want to give you a superpower as well, like Mr. Lee, and ask you about retrospect. So if you could go back in time and change anything throughout your career or personal life, change a decision that you didn't make into making it, which one would it be?
That's an easy one, because my wife and I continuously still talk about it. It's must now be 30 years back. We were in a little theater, in a Kellertheater in Munich, Theater 44, well, I don't know if it still exists. And there was a theater play, I don't recall the name, we never found out. And the game plan was that there was this genie and told the person you can change decisions in your life. And it will happen. And his wife, his marriage had fallen apart, so he then wished, I wish I would have never met my wife. Okay, has happened. And they said, but, you know, in the garden out there, a few minutes back, my children were sitting. Yeah, they are gone. Why are my children gone? I just wished my wife away. Yeah, sorry. If your wife weren't there, these children can't exist. Oh, now I take my wife back. And then it went on like this, on and on and on. And the outcome was, don't change. Everything comes with an up and a downside. And you better accept how it comes about. These theoretical backdoors, calculations, what would have happened if I have done that differently? You didn't do it different. You can't change the world. You can't change yesterday, accept yesterday. And also be tolerant on the yesterday, on others and on yourself. For example, I learned as a manager, when you take over another company or a new role, never ever criticize yesterday's decisions. Or tell people, you're a whole bunch of idiots. You did everything wrong the last 5 years. What that means is you tell potentially thousands of people, you lived your life wrong in the last 5 years. What disastrous things else can you tell? You told people you wasted your life. It is so demotivating. And it doesn't help a bit. Always say, yesterday everything was right. Today, environment has changed. And we have to revisit some decisions for tomorrow. Don't be smart guy of yesterday. It is just destroying followership for you because people cannot tolerate that you tell them that they lived a wrong life. That is so bad. It's bad if you do it, but other people should tell you. So I have nothing to change. Everything that came about, some were better, some were worse. Everything had probably a good side to it. I can live with everything.
Hello, my name is Pavel Manev and I study at TUM. And my question was, you mentioned your wife a couple times, and I wanted to know, how did your wife help support you in your career? And perhaps, can you name a time where she especially helped you to stay resilient?
It's my second wife, by the way, but my first wife, she passed away far back. So I would just talk now about my wife since 20 years. She is what the Queen is to the British Prime Ministers. A Prime Minister cannot talk openly to anybody because they just may tomorrow be the challengers that push him out of Whitehall or Downing Street. So you cannot trust anybody. Anybody will play games with you. So you don't have anybody to trust with. And there was a great play also in the East End in London on this with Helen Mirren, and she played the Queen. And there were 10 prime ministers visiting her. It was a brilliant play. And you could see these prime ministers went there. It's not that she had a superior authority. It was the only person, she was a psychologist for them, and she still is, or the king. You can talk there, she will not break the confidentiality. You can tell that person everything. That person will not fall in your back. And that is, also for me, definitely my wife. She understands the industry a bit, my former industry. She's a lawyer, but she also did a banking education, so she knows a lot of things. And we split roles. For example, I don't even know a bank account number I own. Not a single idea where a dime of the money is. A single idea. It's her job. She does the investment. She does tax returns. She does everything. She doesn't need me. I get bank cards and I get cash when I need, or I can pay things, but otherwise, she's doing the job. And when she has tough decisions or I have tough decisions, we just go on a walk. And sometimes she has good ideas. She has met, a lot of my business relations she knows personally. So sometimes when I had a hard time finding out, whom should I give a job, she sometimes came with good ideas. Have you considered that and that person? I said, no, it's a good idea. Maybe it could work. Sometimes I thought it was stupid. Sometimes I did it. And big important decisions, I regularly consult with her. I don't keep the confidentiality that probably my companies expect. My wife knows pretty much everything that is important in any of my companies, but she never would talk a word to anybody. I need someone that I can cry to and that I can swear to and ask for help and advice. And sometimes she says, you're an idiot. So you need someone. Is it now your partner? Is it what else? I don't know. But it needs to be a deeply trusted relationship where you can risk your life with. So my partner is extremely important for me. Doesn't mean that we don't sometimes have express different opinions on things or that we'd have little fallouts with each other. That is very normal. That is a normal relationship. But there's deep trust. And you need it with someone, but I'm not arguing now it needs your married partner, whoever. But be very certain that you can trust that person, that you have the openness as to the Queen.
Well, I think that's a very beautiful closing statement, and please forward our warmest regards to your wife.
Yeah, maybe, there were some questions about how should we orchestrate our life. You cannot plan a career. As I said, at one time it was a colleague passing away too early in his life. That opened an opportunity. At other times, it was a change in politics or what else that just came about. Don't think that you can plan a career. The only thing that you need to decide what roughly, and that may mature over time, but what are the ambitions that you have? Do you want to lead people or organizations? That's fine. But then you need to understand what goes with it. Or are you more a subject matter person that wants to do a breakthrough in science, which is absolutely fine, or in arts, or what else? It's all good. It's all equal. Nothing is about the other, but you need to form a conviction what your rough ambition in life is. And there you need to dedicate things for. But don't plan for the immediate steps. Take every job or every task that someone gives you, take it as it could be your last one and give it the very best. And don't talk about the next step. Just do it. If you do a good job and if you keep your eyes open and sniff around what else is going on, things will come about if you have it. And if you have good people around you that develop your opportunities. If they are not there, it's anyhow probably a dead road. And then just move it cautiously. And the last thing, if you are on a dead end, wrong, don't give up early. I had parts of my career life where I had real idiots, psychos above me. In one job, I sacrificed 3 years. I held out with a psycho that was sick. I decided at that time of my life, I swallow it. It probably broke part of my backbone. Overall it worked, I would say. But sometimes you need the resilience to also hold out in a very difficult situation. But if it's the wrong environment, the real wrong environment, not just an individual, these come and go. If the environment is wrong, move. Don't stay in a job or in an equation where you don't think that you ask me that question, where at the end of your career you look in the mirror and say, did I live a gelungenes Leben? Then you should not sit there and find out, I knew it all about, I'm in the wrong track, the wrong job, the wrong thing. Then take the risk and move. But if it's the right thing, then you can hold up also tough times. A bad leader, a difficult environment, a boring in-between job. That is normal life. That life is not an easy sail with always the right wind in the back. And then you need to cross sail a little bit. If you're on the right track, swallow, build resilience, hold out, fight, and go for your ambition. If you're in the wrong place, move. Don't waste your life that one day you wake up and can't live with yourself in the mirror any longer. So these are the main things. So my advice: don't plan your life. It will come about different anyhow. Form a conviction on your opinion, on your ambitions. Move, decide the major questions, and swallow the rest, and give it your best, and have fun. Most and foremost, have fun studying. It's I think still the best time in life. So just have not just on Friday afternoons listen to people. Have fun. Enjoy that. Build your friendships for life here. Find potentially a good partner. Use this time. And then go for it wherever it is. Good luck for you all, and thanks for spending a Friday afternoon with me.
Thank you very much.